Okay, so welcome to my Chief Architect to Laser lesson. The intent of this video is just to show you the details on how to take your floor plan from Chief Architect, and to be honest, it could be any version of Chief Architect, but we're using Chief Architect X10 in this video, and how to export your floor plan so that you can put it into Illustrator, prep the artwork, and then use the laser engraver to laser etch your floor plan. Okay, so we're going to start with just a quick new floor plan. I'm not going to do a complicated design, obviously. This is just to give you an example of what to do with your plan. Okay, so I'm just going to make a really simple floor plan once this loads, and we'll move forward. Chief Architect's a little bit slow this morning. Okay. All right, so let's just make a series of external walls. I'm going to make just a simple hypothetical floor plan. Let's bring this a little bit. I'm going to throw some interior walls in because obviously you're going to need these in your model. Let's put here. Let's see. All right, let's throw in some doors. There's no thought to my design here, so please don't critique this architecturally because it's not, honestly, well thought out, of course. Let's drop this down. Let's do a doorway here. Let's do a front door, of course. All right, and then let's put a deck on the back, real simple, small, and then a back door. All right, so let's just pretend that this is obviously your floor plan. Obviously, you have far more elaborate, well thought out plans. How do you get this so that it can show up on the laser? And then at that point, you can build your model moving up forward. First of all, you can just export this as a PDF the way that it is into a layout, which we're going to talk about. But what you want to do is make sure that what you see here is going to be the things that you actually want to laser etch. So maybe you don't want to laser etch the labels and the sizes or the schedule numbers for the doors and the windows. And in essence, when you get to Illustrator, you can delete these things manually, but you might have hundreds of things to delete. So it's very easy to shut off your unnecessary details for when you want to make a floor plan on the laser. So if you have a lot of schedule numbers for doors and windows and labels and things like that, what you're going to go to is your display options for your layers. Okay, so this, I'm putting a little circle on the screen. If you guys can look up on the screen itself, you will see a little circle around the button that you click. It looks like a little red check mark inside a white box. These are all the layers that Chief Architect pre-builds for you. You could probably create your own, but these are your default layers. And everything that you can create in Chief Architect is already associated to a layer. So when you create it, it goes on that layer. There's going to be more layers that you're not going to use than there are in use. So in this column here, if you see a red cross, that means there is something present currently on that layer. What you can do is you can check or uncheck the display next to that layer. So if you're like, I don't want any text on my floor plan right now, if you uncheck this, anything that was in the text layer would be off. Now, you might notice that deck did not disappear. So that's not the layer that it belongs to. But I guarantee it's none of the layers without the red cross. So if you're trying to find something to turn off, only look at the things that have the red crosses because that indicates the layer actually is being used. So if I wanted to shut off like normal walls, according to its display, it says it's there, but I don't see it shutting off. So I'm just going to kind of go through and turn off specific layers. And let's just see if things over here disappear. When I said OK, it's not going to give you a real-time preview until you click OK. So if you noticed, I was wondering why they weren't going away. So we hid the walls. Well, obviously I want the walls, so that would be a bad layer to hide. So we're gonna go back to your layers, and anything with the red crosses, you can put back on. So normal walls, normal railings, wall labels, and so forth. If I click OK, they show back up. So you want to selectively turn things on and off if you don't want to see them. One of the things you don't want to see is your landscaping. So some of you put trees and flower bushes and flower beds and all kinds of various landscaping artifacts. Remember, we're just trying to export a floor plan. So you want to shut off those things. Even your terrain perimeter, okay? It's alphabetic order, so T obviously would be at the lower end of the list. But right now, what I'm going to turn off is text. All right, after that, I want to leave my walls and my railings. Wall labels, no. Wall layers, yeah. We're going to scroll up a little bit. Let's see what we have that's turned on here. Room labels, right? Unless you want to have like dining room etched onto the floor, uncheck it, right? Rooms themselves, I guess I'll leave that. Interior area, that would be obviously your numbers. Room interior dimensions, let's shut that off for now. Let's scroll up to these, and we have polyline labels. I'm going to shut that off. Moldings, that's obviously your trim around the various objects. And let's just hit door labels. Let's shut off door labels. All that other stuff is probably necessary. Let's say okay and see what we see. Okay? So it's a really plain, sterile looking floor plan. There's no extra details. I didn't delete them, I just turned them off. If you've taken graphics before, you're very familiar with turning on and off your layers, okay? But if you've never taken graphics before, this is probably something that might be new to you. All right, at this point, I need to save this because if I don't, I probably can't do what I'm about to do next. So all of you, of course, have this saved. Let's just call it laser example, all right? Now, in order for you to export to a PDF, you need to create a layout. The layout is going to be tied to your scale. Okay, this is what's going to allow you to export a scale that you've intended. We've already talked about this, so I'm assuming you know what I mean. So first you're going to do File, New, and then rather than Plan, you're going to do a Layout. Okay? So when we click Layout, all right, at this point you'll get a sheet. All right? At this moment, this is like your drawing when we were in SolidWorks. You made 3D models, and then after you made a 3D model, you made a drawing. This is the drawing of your house 3D model. When you go to let's see here. I'm just trying to see why it didn't ask me to actually choose the right drawing sheet. I anticipated when I hit new layout. Yeah, I know. Let me close this one. Let's try this one more time. Maybe I'm just not remembering the order of things, but normally I anticipated it asking me the scale. We're going to get to the scale in a minute when you send a view from this window over to here. I know it will ask, but in terms of the paper, I want to see why didn't it ask me what size paper we were going to use, right? If this is an 8.5 by 11, when we send something to the paper, maybe your floor plan is bigger than 8.5 by 11 at your scale. This isn't going to help you. But let's just kind of move forward with it and kind of roll with it, okay? So at this point, I'm going to send this over to here, all right? So when I do File, you're going to hit Send the Layout down here. This will only work if you have a layout running, okay? So I have a layout running here, and that's what's going to allow me to put that over here, okay? So we're going to do File, Send the Layout, and at this point it says, what page number do you want it to go on? You could have 50 pages. Maybe you want it on page 36, right? We only have one page at the moment. Are we going to send the entire plan? Are we going to send the current screen? Or are we going to send it as an image? The image itself is no good for laser. It's literally an image. It'll look pixelated, okay? And then current screen reflects like what you've zoomed into. So if you look here, I've zoomed out a lot. I might want this to be cropped tight and not to have a bunch of space around it. So entire plan view is independent of like what you're looking at, right? Over here, I'm gonna press escape. I could be looking at just this door, and then if I sent it as my view, it would just be this, right? I would want the whole thing. So if I went File, Send the Layout, you want the entire plan, not the current screen, okay? Here, down here is your scale. Remember we talked about it and I said we were gonna stay within the imperial measurements for this specific project. And some of you said, I'm gonna do a 1/16 of an inch, that's gonna indicate a foot. Or I'm gonna do an 1/8 of an inch and that's gonna indicate a foot, right? So for every inch, that symbolizes 8 feet, right? You could say 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. So this is independent of your personal model. For example, if your building is huge, you're gonna have a smaller number here than if your building is giant. I mean, really small, because then you obviously have the liberty to make it a bigger scale, okay? For example, if you're gonna do like the West Farms Mall, your scale would have to be very, very small because the West Farms Mall is huge and you don't want your model when it's done to be like 10 feet by 13 feet big, right? You'll never have the time to make it, and where are you gonna store that, right? So at this point, I'm gonna do 1/8 of an inch equals 1 foot. So when I go over to the laser, every inch that I measure will indicate 8 feet, right? So a 16-foot building is only gonna be 2 inches long, right? That's pretty small. But if I was gonna do a neighborhood, that might work. I don't know. But I'm just trying to get you to think for yourself when it comes to a custom scale. So I'm gonna say okay. And when I do that, it says obviously this stuff has been sent to the layout. Now, regardless of how big this paper is, you can guarantee that this specific thing, if you go over to the laser with the Illustrator PDF, that this will be the right size at the scale that you need it, okay? Obviously this was a small scale, so I'm gonna go back and give you an alternative. So I'm gonna do File, Send the Layout. I'm gonna leave it on the same page. It's gonna overlap, so we'll have to delete. But instead of 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, we'll do 1/4. It should be twice the size. So if I say okay, I'll move this one over. And as you can look, this is 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. This is 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. And as you can see, this is twice the size. So depending on how big your physical object is going to be, that's going to dictate your scale. And at this point in this journey that I'm walking you through, you already have your scale established. At least I hope you have your scale established. If not, it's not too late. So let's just delete this little one, too small, and let's say I want to put this out on my laser. Okay, how do we do it? So first, you have to print it, okay? And then the question is, when you print it, we're not going to use a real printer. We're going to use a PDF printer. So it's just a digital export, okay? So when you go down to here to print, that's not normally supposed to happen, but that looks like a driver issue. Yeah, I get it. Let's see. Just give me the dialog box. All we need is PDF. That's not supposed to happen. It's amazing that this happens when I'm recording. So Chief Architect just crashed. So give it a second. Let's open it back up. And I'm not going to explain everything that I just did in the video again. I'm just going to quickly make a simple shape. I'm not going to make an entire floor plan unless it has a recovery, which it doesn't. So let's go to New Plan. Actually, hold on. Didn't we save it? Open Plan. Let's do Laser Example. We actually do have it. Yeah, let's open this up. Here we go. We still have it. All right. File, New Layout. Let's just save this layout. Maybe the layout would like to be saved. Okay. Now that I have two files, let's just go back and reiterate. right? We're gonna send the layout. I'm gonna do 1/4 of an inch. Honestly, that's pretty small for this tiny little house. Let's make it even twice that size. Make it 1/2 of an inch equals a foot. All right. So there we go. So I want to put this out on the laser. I want to get this into Illustrator. So I already have Illustrator open. It needs a PDF. So the point before I crashed was to export the PDF. So I'm going to quickly save because the computer seems to be temperamental this morning. And then we are going to, I know we have this export and we have a bunch of stuff we can do. But if you look through this list, I want a PDF. And this is for other situations. So we're just going to print. And as long as my computer doesn't crash, which it looks like it's going to, you will normally get your printer options. I have no idea why it's not working, other than I'm trying to record this video. When you look at your printer options, you'll see all the different physical printers, but one of them will say PDF. Choose the PDF, and when you say OK, if it asks you for the scale, you're going to leave it as a 1-to-1 scale. Like whatever this document is in size, you need it that size because you've already made your scale. If you scale a scale, you're going to be off and it's never going to work, right? I'd really like to get this PDF. So I'm going to pause this video, restart my computer, and then make a second video of the export to Illustrator.